Hello, how's it going? Shiki here. You guys really seemed to enjoy the last video. Even though it was just a test of the format to see if this kind of thing worked for you, and well, over 5,000 views in a week for my tiny channel is a resounding yes, it seems. So today we're following up with something you guys were actually suggesting in the comment section, but with a little bit of a twist. A lot of you suggested that I tried a mission with somebody like Flak. Well, as it happens, I've actually been working on something like that for a while, and this is the first part of that. Today we find out, can I beat the entire campaign of Advance Wars 2 playing only as Flak? I would love to do the entire campaign in one video, but that would be like 3 hours long, so today we're just doing the Orange Star campaign. Make sure to subscribe to catch the upcoming installments. I'm running this script before I've started, so everybody comment down below about how you think it's going to go. I think it's just going to be chaos, quite frankly, given his volatile nature. I'm hoping for good luck, of course, but from personal experience, that usually isn't the case. Here are the rules. I can only play as Flak. There are a few moments where I will need other commanders, as once you pick a CO from a nation for your team, when there are multiple COs present, you can't pick another from the same nation. For example, in Great Sea Battle, I can't pick Eagle, Drake and Jess for all 3 positions. Even though I'm using a mod to pick any character for a mission, the game limitation still applies, so I can't have Flak in all 3 positions in this mod if there are 3 commanders present, as fun as that may be. So for missions with an ally, such as Andy in T-15 helping Olaf, he's going to be present as player 2, but Flak has to be player 1. For the factory missions, and for the final boss fight against Sturm, Flak has to be player 1, and I may regret this, also deal the killing blow. For his companion commanders, if it isn't a set ally like in the factory missions, I will pick somebody who's not going to be very helpful, or at least is very unsuitable as an assist. Not gonna lie, I'm really looking forward to this. I foresee some missions being a bit more challenging and others are going to be a total cakewalk with the alterations, but we'll see how we do. I'm going to try every mission at least once, and if we beat this, I'll try the hard campaign as Flak only next too. With that out of the way, let's get this started. Remember to like, subscribe and ring the bell for more. Okay, let's do this. As the game starts and Hawk and Sturm have been talking over their diabolical scheme to plunder more money and resources from the world, the Orange Star commanders call a meeting to discuss how best to defend themselves. They're originally called Red Star in Japan. They got renamed in the West, which is a little unusual to me, but apparently it sounded too commie, so go figure. They renamed Yellow Comet to Gold Comet in Reboot Camp, actually, we found out recently. I did always say Kanbai plates his troops in gold armour, which explains the cost. I didn't think they would take it literally. As Max bullies Andy for not knowing what a continent is, much like his lack of knowledge about airports, our campaign begins in earnest. My evil clone Flak is invading Orange Star, and we, clearly the good one here, need to defeat him and clear our name. Just think of it like the plot of Advance Wars 1. Let's pick him as our character, and with this mod I have installed that allows this run to be possible, give it a whirl and just see where our fortune takes us. This mission is basically the first field training tutorial for the game, and Nell has already graciously taken care of most of the enemy units before we've arrived. The slight quirk of this mod means that my units a lot of the time are going to appear as green, even though Nell still calls them orange units, amusingly. You'll just have to trust me and pretend she isn't colourblind. We just move our troops around for the first few turns as the game tries to give me dialogue I wish I could skip, but I've seen hundreds of times. The first combat of our campaign eventually begins, and in typical fashion, I get a bad luck roll on my very first attacks. Typical. I would normally be able to take out this infantry here using just 2 of my own, but I have to use all 3 to take him down. I should probably go over what Flak's day-to-day abilities actually do. He has a chance to do up to 15% more damage with every attack, but also do 10% less. On the whole, this usually works out as no gain at all or negative. Something that would normally be a safe kill isn't safe anymore. And I think this also applies to counterattacks too, in terms of calculating random counterattack damage, but I'm not entirely sure. You'll have to let me know about that in the comments section. Annoyingly following up on the next turn, he still lives on just 1 health. Flak's damage capabilities, everyone. setting the tone on the very first mission, but we clean sweep through and move on with our perfect score.
Mission complete.
Probably one of the very few I'm going to be able to get with this bonkers setup, especially later on. The next mission comes in and it teaches you about strategic defense points and how to utilize your indirect units. This mission is pretty simple. You normally play it as Sammy. It's a tutorial you get in every game very early on. In the original, it's against Olaf shooting over the bridge with the medium tanks. In Dual Strike, it's against Cole in the desert. Here, it's just kind of sitting and waiting. It's a bit less interesting as we move our artillery into position and wait for the enemy to come to me. The battle does start, and it's literally over within about a minute. I probably sped the footage up as I talk, actually, because once we take out all his combat units, we have to chase his APC around, and so far that has been set to not move. I'd put the Benny Hill music in at this point if I could, so you just have to imagine it's playing as we roam around. I eventually can't be bothered chasing it around anymore, and I just cap his HQ instead. My evil clone says it's not bad for a girl. I'm not going to make a joke about that and move swiftly on.
Mission complete.
Mission 3 is normally a max mission, and usually that isn't a problem. You do start with some artillery, and for max, well, that is usually an issue, but here they're actually going to work in my favour. And that also makes me wonder how certain other missions are going to go. Playing the Grit missions, for example, will be interesting, but also later on, lacking Eagle's firepower and less fuel consumption on the Sea Fortress mission, that may be interesting. I think it will really highlight how the campaign is sculpted to suit certain characters for certain missions, but also it's done so in such a way to teach you about their capabilities and their powers. With this though, Flak has no bonuses on specific units, so the missions that rely on those I think are going to be the hardest. I don't think any mission is going to be impossible, but some will definitely be more irritating than others would normally be. My evil twin does something strange next. He attacks my helicopters with his tanks. Normally, playing this mission as max, we don't even try that. I wonder if it's because of their lower firepower or counterattack damage or something and the game knows? I don't know, I just shrugged. Also, my artillery is actually useful and can hit something. Great. The rest of this mission, though, is just a slugfest, so I'll probably sped up the footage because it's just tanks and helicopters and tank versus tank engagements, clearing up his weakened army one unit at a time, but it's another easy win for me. And now we get a choice of 3 missions as it opens up a little bit.
Mission complete.
Now we can pick which missions to do. I think we will take on the naval combat semi-focused mission and get it out of the way. It isn't really a naval combat mission, but we did just get taught a little bit about how air units work, and we're going to get another tutorial about those later on. The game just kind of shoehorns this in as a naval combat tutorial because, oh no, we haven't taught them about that yet, so here we go. It's just kind of here, really. After attacking the submarine, which was already a 50-50 coin flip on it being destroyed, I go for it with my tank and I barely scratched the paint, so never mind. Lash is my opponent here, and we're going to be seeing a lot more of her later on in the Blue Moon campaign, but for now she's just kind of a hyperactive nuisance that's mostly here for story purposes rather than being an actual suitable opponent. But it makes a nice brief respite from fighting my evil twin. I drop off the transport copter so I can load it up next turn and go for the HQ capture once I've isolated her units from the island, or at least it's my plan. I also start to shell the factory she's captured so I can block it and eventually take it from her so she can't build any more units. A couple of minutes of fire later and we do eventually block it and seize it from her, but for my trouble, Lash pops her superpower. The AI likes to use it as soon as it has it. It isn't smart enough to actually save it for later on, but this here isn't really going to do much of anything. Nell pops up to warn us we have 1 turn left, and this here is where it could get a little bit dicey. If I get a low roll on my battleship attack, I don't think we'll have enough time to take out all of her stuff. And wouldn't that be a cruel but entirely expected thing to happen? Get a low roll and a unit survives on 1 HP at the very end, so we just can't win. Thankfully, we do take it down, and we're able to seize her main island. I build some useless missile units just to flex on her, and we claim victory. Let's go take a look at that other air unit mission, shall we?
Mission complete.
My evil twin has commandeered an air force to strike at me again after I humiliated him with mine last time. He thinks it's Max's boys, but let's surprise the fuck out of him. We have some missiles again this time, but they're actually going to be useful. Doubly so, because we're not playing as Max. We use them to decent effect and start capturing the city that the lab map is contained in. I have to move my helicopter though, if I don't, it's gonna die, and I want it for later on, so I make a retreat and use my infantry as a wall, because the enemy fighter has an insane range. We also have some rocket units, which are another useful piece of kit against that incoming tank. Here comes Evil Flak's Air Force, which it turns out he doesn't even have the authorization to use, but he's just that much of a Chad, he doesn't care. So he just goes for it. He has a pretty decent turn out of it, and those bombers are going to be a pain. We capture the city and we find the lab map. If you complete the mission without capturing the city, the allied soldiers are just going to find it anyway, just to teach you that lab maps are a thing, and it will automatically unlock for you. Although it is still a skippable mission if you don't fancy giving it a go. And we're going to, but not quite just yet. We then proceed to decimate his air force, or as close to it as we can get with our poor lock rolls this turn, as we get a low one on the missiles, annoyingly. We also move our transport copter to go for the HQ as well if we can, once we've cleaned up most of his force. Enemy Flak gets his power and he pops it, which normally would seem hardly worth it, because he doesn't have much left in the way of an army, but his fighter deals a high roll to my transport copter and does actually take it out. So much for that plan, never mind. I'm pretty sure I can clean up his entire army this turn, so let's speed up this footage a bit and clear up the rest. I do love air unit missions, they're always so fun to play. I love the introduction of dusters and ship planes into Days of Ruin that shook up the air meta a little bit. Dusters are also called fighters, as I know them in the Dark Conflict version of the game. I kinda wish stealth fighters were in the game, but I also don't for reasons of if you've played Days of Ruin, you'll know why. What we call fighters also became interceptors in the UK version, which is fair enough, it can get confusing, so I'm just gonna stick with the Days of Ruin names for now. We deal the final blow, and job's done. We finish in 3 turns, so it hardly seems worth the hassle, but never mind, needs must.
Mission complete.
We do lose out on our perfect score as we lost that transport copter and the infantry, but no matter, it's still an S rank overall. Mission 6, Andy's Time. This mission in the hard campaign is what contains the lab map we previously just recovered. This is also the first appearance of the Black Cannon, although it's only a prototype that could fire every other day. These are going to become much more of a pain later on, but for now we can mostly, if not entirely, ignore it. It is our target though, we have to destroy it to progress. I instantly load into the transport we're given and shift off to the west to capture the furthest factories. I want to build a rocket unit or some artillery to take out the cannon, so I just build infantry for now. Evil Flak has a single factory of his own to work with and does the same. I build an APC and I plan to march north to take his factory from him, which usually isn't too hard. Nell tells us about the weak point of the enemy cannon, which thankfully isn't ready to fire yet, as I move my troops up north and I build a solitary tank and I build a recon. I shouldn't really need more than these units to take his factory, as he's only going to build infantry for the first 5 or 6 turns. Eventually, battle engagements begin properly as we move to secure the factories. I drop my infantry next to his own, as it's not going to move off the capturing city to actually hit me because the AI wants to capture as many cities as possible. I don't build any more units for now, as I'm not going to need them. Enemy Flak builds a mech, which could be dangerous, but as it's just spawned and is out of position, it's an easy pick. But for now, because it's super slow, I'm just going to leave it alone. I take the factory I need that I can build a rocket in so I can start shelling the cannon in the next few turns. I also finish cleaning up most of his troops, and I even take the middle factory on the centre island. Enemy flak isn't really much of a threat anymore, which works for me. I build my rocket unit now too. His turn is entirely uneventful, and I take my first shots on the cannon. They can be dangerous because they do 5 HP of damage to all allied units, but it's in a really weird spot. If it was placed where my forces are in the middle by the cities, it would be much more dangerous. Or even if it was just turned 90 degrees to fire down the gauntlet, it would be far more dangerous and challenging. I never really understood why they put it there. Really, I think the hard campaign version of this mission should be the default in the regular campaign. We take out his last guy, but the mission isn't quite over just yet, as the win condition is the cannon rather than routing all units. There are, I think, 3 or 4 set win conditions that can be toggled to apply to a mission, and this is one of them, where the usual ones don't apply. I block his factory for good measure, then just to rub the insult in, I cap his cities and build another useless missile unit just to meme. And then I see dialogue from Nell that I've never actually seen before. Interesting. I almost build a second one just to be a dick, but instead I just build another tank, and I then open fire on the cannon for victory as it violently explodes.
Mission complete.
And we get another perfect score. And his dialogue also really suits Flak at the end there, funnily enough. This mission is optional, but doing this campaign I want to take on and beat as many missions as I possibly can. This is also our first Fog of War mission as well. We have just 7 days to capture their lab or destroy all enemy units. As Nell teaches us the mechanics of how fog works, I move my troops in and I just decide to be ballsy and go for it. I know I'm going to take losses, but to quote Hachi, to heck with it. As the first turn comes to a close, I've dealt a sizable blow. They mostly have indirect units anyway. This mission in hard campaign, if I remember correctly, has a battleship in the reef or something. Or a cruiser. I can't actually quite remember right now. Sammy pops up to give us some intel, which really isn't that helpful. I get a good luck roll as I finish cleaning up most of his units and I prepare to advance on the lab. There's only a single rocket unit left defending it. I seem to be blocked in my advance at first by my APC, but I can scoot a tank around the mountains to hit the single HP infantry. I should have really just been able to run over, but never mind. We march on. Rocket in the woods spots me just as Sammy pops up to tell me it's even there to begin with. Now in actuality, it doesn't spot me. The AI just cheats as it can actually see me. A rocket's vision doesn't extend as far as it did there to shoot me, it just knows where my units are, and I can't see theirs. Although they won't see me in reefs or woods, or, well, they can't shoot me unless there is something next to me because it's coded not to be able to target, but out in the open, yeah, it just cheats. It's unfair, but it is what it is. The rest of this mission is a cakewalk. As soon as I take out the single rocket, there's nothing to stop me capping the lab, and we will instantly win on the next turn. Although I don't know if this will let us use Neo-tanks or not, because normally it unlocks them for Orange Star commanders to use, but we're playing as Black Hole, who should have them by default. I'm not sure how that works, if they're locked by game region or if it ticks boxes for certain COs to use them, or if it already had them unlocked because we're playing as Black Hole. I didn't actually check. Someone who knows the game better than me, let me know in the comments section, I'm curious. Also curious if therefore doing this was therefore pointless, but I wanted the completion anyway because I'm just like that, so can you really blame me?
Mission complete.
The final chapter of this campaign has arrived, the Liberation. As Ada claims he's looking forward to our performance, and that's nice of him. We'll see more of him later on, but for now let's finish what we came here to do. There isn't really much prep to do, so let's just go for it. To start off with, I build an APC and a solitary infantry. It may seem like a weird move, but I want to go for the furthest properties out west ASAP, or we'll lose control of them pretty early on, and we'll lose to a critical mass of swarming units coming into our little corner. I do the same again on my next turn as well to move towards the central area where that airport is. I also build a recon. By the time it gets to be in position, the enemy infantry are going to start coming for the properties I'm going for down south that I'm trying to secure, so it'll help keep them safe, or at least that's the plan anyway. Next we go for the airport. If we can take that, then we can start producing helicopters to clear up some of his swarming zerglings that are running around. Coincidentally though, the factory then deploys some missiles which are going to sit and block my airport for a bit, but I'm going to cap it anyway, at least for the income. And now the infantry are marching in, so I build another recon to help clean them up. The factory is coded for which unit it produces on each day on a set list, but they have different AI options that can be given to them at random, such as aggressive or guard AI, which will follow the infantry around capturing properties to defend them and not do much else. I think the missiles always seem to get the aggressive AI, or at least they seem to with me, and they move into position to sit over my airport and hover around it, which is especially annoying when you have infantry around ready to finish capturing it, which most players do at this point. It's a really irritating unit to have move in on you so early. It gets to a point though where I've got enough troops around to hold my line so I can move in with my infantry and take it out, which means I can finally buy my helicopters. The factory produces what are called ambush spawns. They have them in Fire Emblem too. It deploys units that are fresh and ready to move instantly, rather than picking them for a base to deploy them, which can be a little bit annoying. His rockets he has now are going to be a problem for that. So I at least pepper them a little bit and get rid of that tank with a lucky roll, thankfully, whilst building an infantry to prevent my southern factory from being captured as his troops are in range. Also, pay close attention to how the AI has his rockets and what he does with them. They attack me, and in doing so, they block their own spawn point, so no units are going to come through that door whilst it's sat there. Good, let's try and keep it there as long as we possibly can. I go for the attack on the rocket with the infantry to also block another door, after also putting a tank or two in range for it to target so it will keep it there as long as possible. Doing so will block both doors for another turn, and it eases up the incoming army, so I have some breathing room at least. Enemy Flak then pops his superpower, and nothing really happens. It's perfect time for him to pop it really, as it just wastes it and gets it out of the way. As I said before, the AI isn't smart enough to save it. It will just use it as soon as they have it. Certain COs I've noticed do pop it after different moments, like Hawk will sometimes save it for the end of his turn if he gets it on that move, other times he won't and he'll save it for the next turn. Drake will use it mid-turn as soon as he gets enough charge sometimes and pop Tsunami instantly, especially in Dual Strike. Oh god, he's so bad for that in Dual Strike, which makes fighting against him in that mission in the third act of the campaign or in the war room extremely annoying, because he rarely saves for Typhoon, he just does it over and over and over and over again. It's so irritating. I eventually remember the infantry I sent up north like 7 or 8 minutes ago, which are still there, and I go for the city so I can get more money. I want a bomber unit to take out the pipe scene, but I have at least started to chip away at it with my helicopter. I keep the infantry by the factory door where it is yet again to block the factory, as baiting the rockets with my tanks before worked. I have sufficient enough income now to save for a bomber, so I don't buy any units. The enemy force is sufficiently dwindled too to not really be a threat. Especially with having seized the westernmost factory, which the AI likes to turbocharge towards. If you ignore it, they can slowly snowball you with it and the infinitely spawning factory units, which is also partly why I was glad to block the door. We get our bomber, which means victory is literally moments away. This mission is always a fun one to play. Usually I play it as Sammy, and I like to treat it as a tense race for the properties with her commandos. What I love about Advance Wars is you can treat it as seriously as you like. Sure, it's cartoony, and sure it makes light-hearted jokes and moments about things, and it doesn't really focus on the heaviness of the subject matter, usually. I'm looking at you, Days of Ruin, but you can treat it seriously if you want to, and sort of roleplay it, I guess. Suspend your disbelief, which I like to do. I enjoy strategy games, and I like my games to tell a story, or I make my own. It's why I enjoy Paradox games, as you can make your own narrative with what's kind of loosely there. And outside of the cutscenes and the pre-mission talking, we don't get any story with this, so I just like to insert my own like this. Before we move on to the next campaign and see what shenanigans ensue, I think this was a nice warm-up for what's to come. I popped my own superpower for the hell of it, because it's the final turn, after all. I'm going to go out in style and a bang for concluding this mission, I think. I take out his rockets by the gate, and I take out his artillery in one go too, which looked amazing. Clearing up the rest of his army, or at least as much as I can as I go for that power score, I build a bunch of units for technique whilst I'm at it. I then send in my bomber to bust that damn pipe and send my evil clone Flak packing. We'll run into him again later on, but not for a while yet.
Mission complete.
And we take victory. A 294-point S rank is not bad for concluding this mission. It's actually a better score than I got in my Let's Play for Advance Wars 2, let's be honest, funnily enough. Although Flak still thinks it's a waste of his time. One of his war room quotes, actually, which is funny because for other missions it's given us the commander quote for who was meant to be playing. I guess it's because it's a pick and choose mission, it just gives us a random one, I don't know. Either way, the Orange Star campaign is clear. Moving forward, the Blue Moon and Yellow Comet nations also report they're under attack. Olaf and Grit are arguing as usual, and the Emperor of the Missing Sock declares his liberation campaign, but we're going to take those on next time. That was a lot of fun. I really hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. I'm looking forward to this campaign of chaos and where it's going to take us. Thanks for joining me on this chapter of it today, and I hope you'll join us for the next one, where we're going to take on either Blue Moon or Yellow Comet. I'm not sure which yet. Vote for it in the comment section down below, and make sure to subscribe to catch it when we do it. As always, it has been an absolute pleasure. Like the video if you did, and cheers for joining me today. Take care, and I'll see you again sometime very soon. Ta-ra for now. Bye-bye.